What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. I hope you're all having a great Valentine's Day. Today, to celebrate, I wanted to showcase one of the most thematic Pokemon that we could in the Love Cup here with Alomomola. This heart-shaped fish is one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the entire game. It has a lot of fast pressure with Waterfall. It's a little slow to its charge moves of Hydro Pump and Psychic, but because of its bulk and flexibility in this meta, it's actually a very strong Pokemon. Before we get into the battles, I just want to say, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you've been enjoying these videos. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get into the battles and see what Alomomola can do. Alright, let's get into the first battle of the day, Medicham, up against a Galarian Slowbro. One of the worst things we could see, Psychic and Poison both resist my fighting type damage. I'm not running Psychic as well, so I don't have great charge pressure into this, even if I get shields down, and our opponent swaps in a Medicham into our Lickilicky safe swap. Not only a Medicham, but another counter Medicham. If they had Psycho Cut, we take a lot less fast pressure, but counter is always going to do a ton of damage to us, no matter what their charges are going to be. With that said, I am going to shield this up, hope for no Power-Up Punch. Anything but a Power-Up Punch at this point will be able to be a very good thing to see. Ice Punch is going to be thrown, so a very cheap move, but our Body Slams are going to be even cheaper. We can out-spam them here to these charge attacks, see what our opponent wants to do. Body Slam is going to draw that first shield. Body Slam number 2 coming through. Is our opponent going to double shield for switch? If they do, that's fine for me. At this point, I'm going to let our Lickilicky go. I don't really have much else of an option here, but I am going to absorb all of this energy on Medicham and hope that our Alomomola can sweep the backline. With that said, they actually ended up saving all that energy on Medicham. They come in Galarian Slowbro, a Pokemon which is very spammy, but not exactly the bulkiest pick in the game. I think at this point, Alomomola can neutralize this threat and hopefully make it so our Medicham should have a decent matchup in the backline. I am a little bit scared they could have another Pokemon good against Medicham, maybe like a Skeledirge or a Talonflame, because they did swap out so instantly to this Slowbro. That likely means that they are not that worried about Medicham in the backline, so it's going to be interesting to see what they actually do end up having. Brutal Swing does quite a bit of damage. I want to throw a Psychic before they can swap out. Let's see if our opponent is going to be able to get knocked out. I don't think they're quite in range where Psychic is enough, but it will be in range where Fast Moves after the fact should be able to knock them out. The final Pokemon going to be revealed. It is a Lickilicky of their own. We know this could have Shadow Ball. I'm going to respect it, shield up the attack, and if they Body Slam bait, then I'm going to instantly Dynamic Punch, try to knock this out before they could potentially reach that super effective charge attack. They did go for a bait, so I'm going to have to knock them out here as quickly as I can. Dynamic Punch coming through, one-shotting Lickilicky, and what do they bring in? They actually end up top-lefting, realizing that Medicham at that point was in a very good position to fast move down the rest of their team. GG's to our opponent. Next game, Medicham into Medicham, a very, very interesting mirror match, especially depending on the fast moves that our opponent and that I am running. I'm running the counter fast move, which has a lot more fast move pressure, despite being resisted into their Medicham, but they're running Psycho Cut, which is going to be neutral and generate a lot more energy. They actually got a defense drop, so I'm going to swap out here. It might be a weird play to switch into a Lickilicky against a fighting-type Pokemon, but I know with Shadow Ball and with them having Psycho Cut, this actually is not the worst matchup in the world, especially after our counters have put them very close, at least to the Shadow Ball range. In comes our first Body Slam. Our opponent could shield this up if they want to. Let's see what they're going to do. They do opt to respect that first attack here, and then they make a very interesting play. They do one Psycho Cut, and they wait a turn to CMP on my next attack. This likely means they're going to go for a Dynamic Punch and no-shield this attack. Now I'm locked into this move. At this point, I would have gone for a Shadow Ball if I would have been able to know that they were going to CMP us there, but because they went for that very high-level play, we're going to be locked into a Body Slam. I'm going to throw yet another one, put them into a range where Ice Punch could knock them out, and then try to step them down here with our Medicham in just a second. We save a lot of energy and HP on our Lickilicky, but at this point they do have that shield. Do they opt to shield this up, or are they going to let down their Medicham? They do opt to shield it up here, which is an interesting play depending on their final Pokemon. They soar a Dynamic Punch. They actually have a lot of energy on Medicham left over, so this game could get a little bit tricky. Dynamic Punch against Alomomola, though, going to do a lot of damage to this Pokemon. It is very bulky, but if I can reach another one here before they can farm us down, this is not going to be the worst case scenario. They are getting a little bit greedy. They tried to farm us all the way down, but this Dynamic Punch is going to be barely able to be reached, which should be able to get the knockout against this Pokemon. And if they bring in their final Pokemon, we'll know their full team. It is going to be an Electrode, a Pokemon, which is honestly very scary to see. If I had Earthquake on our Lickilicky, we could one-shot them here. Unfortunately for me, though, I'm running Shadow Ball. Our opponent knows this at this point, and Shadow Ball is not going to do anywhere near as much damage as I would want it to do. I'm going to call the combo play with their Lickilicky, but I end up actually just catching a Discharge here. Not exactly the best play in the world. They go for it, and this is going to be able to almost two-shot us. Not quite because of the bulk on Alomomola, but at this point, them landing this charging pressure here is going to be absolutely catastrophic. At this point, they can probably farm us down with their Medicham, maybe throw a charge move against us if they need to. Yeah, they had a little bit less HP than I remembered, but this Dynamic Punch will knock us out, and they are very close to another one here. Lickilicky going to try to farm them down, but they are able to reach the next charge attack. This is not looking good for us. Dynamic Punch likely going to be enough to knock us out here, and our opponent able to win that game. GG's to them. Next matchup, we're going to see our Medicham up against a Clefable. We cannot catch a break with these leads right now. Clefable is one of the worst leads that we could possibly see here. Lickilicky is not a great answer into this either. Honestly, I don't have a good answer into Clefable on my entire team, but Lickilicky is going to try its best to chip it down with a Body Slam, see if we can land as much damage as we can before they swap out. They actually swap out right after that charge move. They store a lot of energy on Clefable, and they come in with a Milotic. This is interesting. This Pokemon is not the hardest answer in the game to a Lickilicky. We have a Shadow Ball ready to go. It's not going to one-shot them, but it will put them pretty low into the range where Body Slams and Rollouts will be able to knock them out later on. They end up throwing a charge move. I know that's not a Hyper Beam. It's just going to be a Surf here. We can survive and try to put this matchup the longer it goes on. That said, I know a Body Slam is not quite enough here. I'm going to go straight for the Shadow Ball, expecting an opponent to no-shield this move, and they do. They did try to get a bit greedy here. I have my next Body Slam. They realize that, and they likely have to throw a Swift to knock us out. At this point, Swift is going to be able to be a lot cheaper than like a Moonblast or a Meteor Mash, so they still have quite a bit of energy on this Clefable, which means this is still going to be a very tricky Pokemon to take down. They do have a lot of energy here, but what is their moveset? They could have Meteor Mash as their second charge move. I have seen that quite a few times. They end up throwing a Swift, so that might mean that their second move is going to be Meteor Mash. With that said, they had a lot of energy. This could still be a Moonblast depending on what they want to throw. In comes the next charge move. It is a Moonblast. It does a massive amount of damage to us here, and we do barely reach a Psychic, which will be able to either draw a shield or potentially get a KO against this Clefable, depending on what our opponent wants to do. They actually opt to shield that attack up here, which is very interesting. That means likely it's going to be a fire type in the back line, something else in the back that's going to be weak to Alomomola. Swift is going to draw her shield. It is a fire type, but fortunately enough for us, I think that's one of the best fire types that we could possibly see here. It's a Shadow Charizard. This Pokemon, if it doesn't land a Blast Burn against us, is not going to be able to win this game. If I shield up properly here, I should be able to have this match. I shield the Blast Burn. We can reach 2 Ice Punches before they are able to get to another move, and we're able to win that one, even though they had one of the worst case scenarios there in the back line. Next game, we're going to see a Medicham Mirror once again. And once again, it's going to be a Psycho Cut Medicham, it looks like. So a very neutral matchup. Honestly, we do a lot more faster pressure to them than they do to us, but they do generate energy a little bit quicker, so this matchup is very interesting. Psychic comes through. It doesn't debuff us this time, which is fantastic. Ice Punch is a very powerful move. It should be able to two-shot or at least come close to it, especially with our counter faster pressure. Ice Punch is going to land. They are below half HP. At this point, we have done more damage to them than they have to us, but they will be able to outpace us to that third charge move and always win the Zero Shield matchup. But this matchup is not as bad as you might think for a Pokemon doing a lot of resisted and non-stab damage. Ice Punch coming through, our opponent likely going to let this go, and if they do end up knocking out our Medicham, it is going to set up our Lickilicky for an endgame sweep. They do opt to throw a charge move before I counter them down. This is a prime rollout down range for our Lickilicky. I can get a lot of energy, and I would not expect a second hard answer to a normal type in the back. We get 3 full rollouts, 4 efforts here. What are they going to bring in to drain energy from our Lickilicky? Unfortunately, they do actually have a secondary answer to our Lickilicky with a Crocodile and a Lickilicky of their own in the back. So 2 more Pokemon weak to counter. I guess I should have saved Medicham for that. With that said, our Alomomola should be a good enough Pokemon into this, and our energy lead on Lickilicky should potentially help us out in that matchup. We shield up a Shadow Ball here. Our opponent likely has to shield up the Psychic. Let's see what is going to happen. Psychic is able to put them pretty low if they opt to let it go, so they are going to respect it. They do shield up that attack, and the next Psychic is going to come through very shortly after. They're throwing another Shadow Ball likely against us, but I know at this point we can survive. We might even survive the next one because of how bulky this Pokemon is. We reach that Psychic, and we'll see what our opponent wants to do. Psychic, if it lands, is going to put them pretty low into fast food farm down range. They do let that move through, and they are going to throw the Shadow Ball against our Alomomola. At this point, I can roll out this down. I can come in with our Lickilicky, and I think that 2 Body Slams should be enough after the Waterfall damage I got into this Crocodile to knock this Pokemon out. With that said, they have enough energy on this Pokemon. They can likely reach 2 Brick Breaks against us before that 3rd Body Slam is going to be thrown, which means I'm going to be forced to no-shield that first attack. I'm going to no-shield knowing that the defense drop is going to make it so the next charge move is going to do even more damage, and because of that, I get to 2 Body Slams. I might CMP on this next move if they do want to throw. Maybe they just commit to faster pressure at this point. Let's see what's going to happen. Body Slam does end up coming through. There's that Brick Break, so a good thing I still have my shield for this move, and now I can knock out this Crocodile, hopefully roll out down that Lickilicky, and we should be able to win this game. In comes the next Body Slam. Our opponent doesn't have any shields remaining. This is barely enough to knock out that Crocodile. In comes the Lickilicky. 2 rollouts enough to knock them out. We barely survive, even at -2 defense, just barely able to take that one. Next matchup, Medicham up against a Lickilicky. We know this Pokemon could have Shadow Ball. If they stay in for a second, that likely means they're going to at least bait it, so I'm going to see what we can do here. They are staying in, so I want to actually catch this move if I can on our Lickilicky. This is going to be able to drain a ton of energy. If this is a Shadow Ball, what move is it going to be? Shadow Ball comes through. It does nothing to our Lickilicky. A fantastic catch, if I do say so myself, and they throw yet another charge move against our Lickilicky. At this point, we always win this mirror match because we're up a lot of damage and a lot of energy. What are they going to do? Do they stay in this matchup? It looks like they are not swapping out quite yet, which is pretty interesting. In comes another Body Slam. At this point, we have back-to-back moves. We can throw one and then the other, depending on what they want to do. Body Slam is going to end up being thrown. I would not expect to see a shield here, but I guess they could if they're really desperate. Body Slam able to land. The next one coming through shortly after. What is our opponent going to do? Body Slam likely is going to end up landing if I had to guess, and we'll see what's going to come in. It's a Judgment, a very squishy Pokemon, and a pick that we have Shadow Ball, which it won't one-shot, but if it does end up landing, we'll do a massive amount of damage against them. In comes the Shadow Ball. Our opponent does opt to let it go, and I can bring in Medicham, go for an Ice Punch, and try to draw that shield. At this point, if they do shield up this attack, I can shield up myself and farm them down. Maybe I could even no-shield if I wanted to, knowing that a Dragon Claw or Night Slash does not do too much damage, or opponent realizing Medicham is a little bit too much to take out, ends up top lifting. GG's to them. Another Lickilicky in the lead, finally catching a little bit of a break with these lead matchups, but our opponent's safe swapping a Slowbro, a Pokemon we don't have a hard answer to, but our Lickilicky is generally a pretty safe response into this because we do have super effective Shadow Ball, and even Body Slams, if they end up calling them, will add up over time. In comes the charge move. It is just a Brutal Swing, so not a super effective, or not a stab rather, Sludge Bomb, or I guess it could be a super effective Focus Blast, luckily just a Brutal Swing, one of the best things that we could see there. Body Slam coming through, our opponent making a nice call. Next Body Slam going to come through against this Pokemon. What is our opponent going to do? I wouldn't expect a shield here at this point. They likely are just going to let's go. Oh, they actually do end up shielding that move, which is interesting. Next Body Slam coming through right after the fact. Let's see if our opponent wants to double shield this Slowbro. I know they survived this Body Slam. They probably know that as well. And they are going to no shield, surviving on just about 1 HP. I know at this point Brutal Swing will knock us out, but I'm not all that worried about switch advantage this game, knowing that our Medicham should be able to counter this down, have a lot of neutral pressure against that final Pokemon, whatever it might be, unless it's like a Skeledirge, and if it is, then our Alomomola up a shield should be able to win this game. Our opponent is thinking they end up bringing in their own Alomomola and up a shield and up energy. I think this matchup is not that bad for us. This first Dynamic Punch is going to end up coming through. If our opponent opts to let this go, it's going to be a massive amount of damage into this pick, and they do let that move through, which is obviously going to be because they want to shield their Lickilicky in the backline. They're hoping that our final Pokemon is weak to Lickilicky, but fortunately for us, that is not the case. Psychic ends up coming through. It does draw our shield. We have a Dynamic Punch ready to go, and we are going to try to knock out this Alomomola if we can. Dynamic Punch being thrown, our opponent is going to opt to shield it up, and now I bring in my own Alomomola, try to get an energy lead, and in comes that Lickilicky. Shields are down, which means this Pokemon, unless they have like Solar Beam, is not going to be able to win this game. Honestly, at this point, even Hyper Beam might not be enough to save them. I'm just going to no-shield, expecting them, if they do actually have the move, to just throw it instantly, but not expecting them to have it at all. We end up no-shielding the Shadow Ball, which is fantastic to see. In comes a Hydro Pump. Our opponent likely is going to get knocked out or come very close to it. Waterfalls at this point will be enough to finish off this game, and they are not going to be able to land a Body Slam against us, meaning even if they do get a Psychic with their Alomomola, we are not going to get knocked out by it. In comes their Alomomola. We are very close to a Psychic here. We can throw it the second that we get it, knock them out, and take the win this game. Another very good lead for us to see. Those Lickilicky leads are so much better than the Clefable leads we've been seeing. Psychic enough to knock out Alomomola, and we take that game. In the next matchup here, Medicham up against, well, there's the Clefable. Not what we wanted to see here, but we have answers in the back, or at least neutral options that might be able to neutralize this Pokemon, and hopefully Medicham, once his Pokemon is gone, should have some play. Body Slam coming through. Does our opponent want to respect this move? Likely not. They know at this point it's only going to be a Body Slam, so it is going to come through our opponent letting it go, and they throw a bit of chip damage against us here. Are they going to stay in this matchup? If so, that's honestly kind of good for us, but that might mean there's another answer to Medicham in the back. Swift is going to be thrown, and they come in with their own Lickilicky, so definitely not an answer to our Lickilicky, but after that chip damage, and after we've thrown energy, it's not exactly going to be the best matchup for us either. They're throwing a charge move here. It's going to be an Earthquake, actually, which likely implies they're not running Shadow Ball unless they're running double nukes, which would be a little bit interesting. I'm going to go for this Body Slam, and the second that I can, I'm going to swap out to Medicham. I know I can survive any charge move they're going to throw, even if they did have Shadow Ball here, and I should be able to counter them down if they can't swap out. And even if they can, at this point, I have chipped down that Clefable quite a bit. I can land an Ice Punch against them, and I should be in a decent spot. They can throw another charge move against us. They go for 2 Body Slams, and at this point, the switch clock has been decent enough that I think they will be able to swap out themselves. In comes that Clefable. We have the Ice Punch ready to go. It's not going to one-shot them or anything, but at this point, it will be able to lower them down quite a bit, make it so I can Waterfall or Body Slam and knock them out later on. In comes this next charge move from the Clefable. At this point, that was a CMP. I might as well shield this up. Try to lower down this HP on this Clefable as much as I can. If they shield this up, I can combo play them with our Lickilicky. If they no-shield this, then I guess we'll see what that final Pokemon is going to be. They let that move go. What is their final Pokemon? It's a Fire and Rock-type Pokemon, a Magcargo, exactly what our Waterfall user wants to see. Honestly, I wish these fast moves did a bit more damage. That doesn't look like it's 4 times effective, but here we are, shielding once, farming all the way down. At this point, Alomomola should have this game in the bag. Overheat ends up getting shielded up there, and that Lickilicky in the backline has very little HP. We're able to Waterfall them down and take the win. Next matchup, we're going to see Medicham up against a Lickilicky once again in the lead, much better than that Clefable lead that we saw in that last game. Our opponent this time does instantly swap out here to their Slowbro, baiting out our Lickilicky, and we'll see what they have as their moveset. If they are running Sludge Bomb, they can do quite a bit of neutral charge move pressure against us, but if it's just Brutal Swing, it's not going to be too bad. They actually go for a Surf, which I guess is also a lot of neutral fast move pressure, or neutral charge move pressure, that is, and these Poison Jabs are going to start adding up. Body Slam coming through, our opponent is going to opt to shield that move up here, and now I'm going to go for a Shadow Ball. Let's see if our opponent is going to shield up a second time. Maybe I should have double baited. I think they always do shield up this move, and they do end up shielding up that attack, which is a little bit awkward. At this point, if I do want to win this game, or win this matchup specifically, I need to make sure I can go for a Shadow Ball against this Pokemon. I will have to double shield, but I think that's worth it if I can keep switch advantage, and if I can knock out this Slowbro. I'm going to shield a second time here. In comes the Brutal Swing. I'm going to watch for a catch here. The animations don't update, and in comes a Lickilicky to catch our Shadow Ball. That's exactly what happens when the game doesn't visually update. It lets your catches like that to happen, which is not what you want to see, but I think at this point, we can still at least set up a little bit against this Lickilicky, especially if it's not on Shadow Ball. We're not going to be in a terrible spot, but if it is Shadow Ball, then man, I wish I didn't let that catch happen. Earthquake does end up coming through here. I'm going to overfarm just a little bit, and maybe even go for a full farm down if they go for a Body Slam. I was going to see if they're going to respect the Earthquake or not, but they just throw the charge move here instantly, and now I think I can farm them all the way down, go for Ice Punches against whatever comes in, likely that Slowbro, and knock them out here. What are they going to bring in, though? They're thinking for just a second. They do bring in that Slowbro once again. In comes an Ice Punch. This won't knock them out, but I have back-to-back charge moves, so if they do opt to let this go, which I guess they don't have a shield, so they kind of have to. This Ice Punch should be able to knock them out. Now Medicham has taken out this Pokemon. It's going to be the Zero Shield matchup against whatever their final Pokemon is going to be. It's an Ariadosa Pokemon, which obviously does have access potentially to Trailblaze. If they do have Trailblaze here, this matchup could be very bad. But if they're on potentially Mega Horn or Cross Poison, this matchup might not be quite as terrible for us. They do have Trailblaze. It's going to boost their attack stat up here quite a bit. Is this Trailblaze enough to knock us out right now? I have to hope that we survive and we can get off the Psychic. The Trailblaze does come through. 1 HP survive. We have a very high rank Alomomola, showcasing why it is one of the best Pokemon in this meta. That raw bulk stat, able to survive 2 super effective charge moves, and barely winning the game against that Ariados. GG's to them. Next matchup here, a Skeledirge in lead. Not a great lead for us at all. Honestly, one of the worst leads we could see. All of our damage on Medicham is completely resisted. We safe swap here with our Lickilicky, and our opponent obviously counter swaps with a Scrafty. This is not what we want to see in the slightest. Scrafty, one of the best answers in the entire game to a Lickilicky. Rollout does nothing. Body Sims don't 3-shot, and it puts us in such a bad spot if they get a ton of energy to throw into our Medicham. In comes our second Body Slam. This is not going to knock them out, not even come anywhere near close to knocking them out, but I can reach a Shadow Ball here. It does like 1 extra damage. I think it's literally 1 extra damage against this Pokemon. Despite being resisted, it is a little bit stronger of a move, and it does end up getting no-shielded, but at this point they have a ton of energy on this Pokemon. I don't think I can counter them down before their second charge move is going to be reached. This Scrafty is going to be just a little bit too loaded. Thunder Punch is going to be thrown. They have a second charge move. Is it a Thunder Punch? Is it a Foul Play? Honestly, at this point, I don't really care. There's a Skeledirge in the back line, so Medicham, no matter what, is in a world of hurt. Our opponent brings back in that Skeledirge. Alomomola comes in here, and a Psycho Cut Medicham is in the backline. That gives me a little bit of hope, but honestly, I don't think this game is winnable. They have a Shadow Ball on that Skeledirge. At this point, all they need to do is whittle down my Alomomola enough where I can't win this game just with our fish. We can go for the Psychics, try to draw shields from them if we can. They might no-shield this knowing that it's not a Hydro Pump, but honestly at this point they'd probably just invest all of their shields here. No, they do actually no-shield that attack, but we are so low at this point. 2 moves from this Medicham are going to be reached. They should be able to knock us out here, and that is going to draw both of our shields, and then a Shadow Ball from that Skeledirge is going to be more than enough to finish off this game. I'm just going to top left there, make it so it's not going to be quite as drawn out of a loss. GG's to our opponent. Dang, next game here, another Clefable in lead. Not what we want to see. Once again, Clefable's coming out of the woodwork today, it seems, but this Pokemon once again staying into our Lickilicky safe swap. We have our Body Slams ready to go against this Pokemon. Our opponent could swap out if they want to, but we'll see what they're going to do. Body Slam ends up landing. They throw a charge move up against our Lickilicky here. It could be a Moonblast. They have a lot of energy, and this time it actually is, which is going to put us very close to the red health, very close to where maybe like a Swift could knock us out here. I'm going to bait the Shadow Ball. Let's see what our opponent is going to do. In comes Body Slam, and it does end up getting no-shield. We are close to the next attack, but I know at this point, if they're running Swift, it doesn't quite knock us out yet. I can no-shield this, land another Body Slam, and maybe we can still win this game. In comes that Body Slam. Our opponent has a big decision to make if they want Switch advantage or Shield advantage this game. They actually opt to go for Switch, it looks like. So we have Shield advantage, and we can farm this down potentially with either our Medicham or with our Alomomola. I'm thinking at this point they're likely going to have another answer to Medicham in the backline, but I want to get a huge energy lead if I can on our Medicham. We shield up a Moonblast here. We try to counter them down. In the backline, there's a Rotom that comes in. That's a huge core breaker. I'm going to go for the Ice Punch. I hope this ends up landing. If it does, I think I might be able to Waterfall down, but this is not looking great right now. It looks like they might be triple countering Medicham the way that they are playing this game out. But I think we can Waterfall down this Rotom. If that is the case, they go for Thunderbolt. Yeah, I think at this point, Waterfall should be enough to knock them out before even an Ominous Wind is going to be reached. We should be able to have a bit of play depending on what that final Pokemon is going to be. What do they bring in here but a Galarian Slowbro? So it is going to be that triple counter to our Medicham team. Exactly what we did not want to see, but Psychic is going to end up landing. Is this enough damage to knock them out or potentially draw a shield? They do have to shield it up here, but I don't think it can reach a Hydro Pump before we get farmed down. Here comes a Brutal Swing our opponent is likely going to throw. Oh, it's actually a Sludge Bomb here. First trainer that I've ever seen respecting one of the best movesets in the game. It seems like most of the time you see Surf or Scald. I love the Sludge Bomb. I think it's the best moveset you can run on this Pokemon, but a lot of people don't seem to agree with me. I end up swapping out, but they try to combo play, or they try to swap out to their Clefable. They think they get to a Swift, but because of that, I get a huge farm down against them. Now I just have an Ice Punch against this Pokemon. Somehow out of nowhere, we're winning this game, beating the Slowbro and the Clefable with our Medicham. I'll take it, I guess. Our opponent thought they had a bit more HP on that Clefable than they did, and it definitely helped us out quite a bit. Next game, I'm going to see that Talonflame in the lead. And once again, a Fire type with a Scrafty in the backline. Honestly, a very cookie-cutter team. This is not what you want to see here as a Lickilicky, as we have seen this game. We're going to go for a Body Slam and see what our opponent is going to do. Body Slam ends up coming through. Our opponent is going to throw a Charge Move here, likely in just a second. And because they are throwing a Charge Move, I'm going to let this go and just be happy that they won't get 2 Charge Moves off against our Medicham. Foul Play almost knocks us out here, but not quite enough to KO our Lickilicky. But at this point, I don't really want to do too much damage to them. I'm going to undercharge this a little bit and see if they're going to farm us down. They are actually not tapping anymore. I'm going to stop tapping. I don't want to do any more damage. I want as much farm on our Medicham as we can get, because even though Ice Punch is not going to do a lot of damage to that Talonflame, it might do enough that we can at least start chipping them down, making it so our Medicham could deal with that Pokemon later on. Foul Play going to be thrown against us. It does a decent chunk of damage, but only going to reach that 1 charge move because it did throw energy against our Lickilicky earlier on this game, and we have an Ice Punch ready to go against this Talon when it does come back in. Ice Punch is going to chip him down a little bit, probably close to about half health. It will be after I get some more Waterfall damage against them, and because of that, maybe there's a chance Medicham can deal with this later on. I ended up catching a move, likely a Fly coming through here, not able to do a ton of damage to us. They likely would have wanted to throw a Brave Bird if they knew I was going to catch, but because I was able to catch the Fly, we might still have a chance. But honestly, a Psycho Cut Medicham might just be a little bit too much for us to deal with in the back. Dynamic Punch comes through. It does a lot of charge move pressure. I know the fast moves against us are not doing too much damage. Psycho Cut is not going to be a high damage fast move, but Psychic is going to get shielded. We get a defense drop, which gives me a little bit of hope, but I think at this point this matchup is going to be able to play out just long enough for them to be able to reach that 3rd Dynamic Punch that they are going to need. Just whittle down my Alomomola just enough to win this game. I'm going to no shield, hoping that I can farm this down, maybe reach 2 Ice Punches against that Talonflame, but I think we can swap out, Incinerate me down, and win the game. In comes the charge move. It is going to be a Psychic here. In comes that Talon. I don't have anywhere near enough energy. Maybe if Counter's energy wasn't nerfed, I could have won that one, but GG's to our opponent. Next matchup, a Scrafty in the lead. A fantastic lead matchup for us to see. Our opponent likely going to swap out instantly, and they do into a Milotic. I'm expecting right now a double Water team, likely with an Alomomola in the backline. Normally you don't see a Waterfall Milotic unless they do actually have another Water type back there. We're going to go for a Dynamic Punch and see what our opponent is going to do. Dynamic Punch does end up landing. I catch a Surf as well on our Alomomola, which means now we can farm them all the way down, likely before they even get a second Surf, which is fantastic news for our team. We get that full Waterfall down here. It looks like no Surf is even going to be reached, which means that now we have a lot of energy on our Alomomola, and they are likely going to bring back in that Scrafty. What is going to come in? It is going to be the Scrafty as we thought it would be, and they can go for Thunder Punch against us if they want to, but I'm going to bait a Psychic. I know at this point they could shield a Hydro Pump and get a ton of energy, so I'm going to go for the bait instead. Our opponent, though, making a very bold call, no shielding that Psychic up here, which is a little bit embarrassing for me. I probably should have just gone for the Hydro Pump guaranteed to shield or a ton of damage, but at this point another Psychic is going to be reached. This should be able to either come close to knocking them out or put them into a fast move farm down range if they opt to no-shield it up, and they do let it go. And comes a charge move from the Scrafty. It is going to be a Thunder Punch almost certainly, and it will knock us out, but our Medicham can counter this down. Our opponent's final Pokemon is a second Water type, but it's not going to be the Water type I thought. It's the Seaking rather than the Alomomola. This Pokemon obviously does have access to Icy Wind, which means I probably should have thrown energy before they threw a charge move here, but because the animations are kind of weird, I was just going to wait to see them throw, and they know they have to shield up these moves anyway. In comes a Body Slam. If it gets no shielded, I can probably just counter down everything this game. They do opt to let that move through, but I have another Body Slam ready to go in just a second. But once again, I throw just a little bit too late. They get another Icy Wind off against us, but I know we can still get a ton of damage with these 2 Body Slams, despite being at -2. At this point, if they don't shield up, I have a Medicham. I can counter them all the way down. They are forced to shield this move. I'm going to clear my debuff. They actually swap at the same time, trying to combo play us with the Scrafty, but because we swapped out, we can counter down the Scrafty here, go for energy against that Seaking, and Medicham should be able to close out this endgame even if Lickilicky can't. In comes that Seaking once again. I'm going to go for the Ice Punch here. I know that they likely will try to no-shield this, but if they do, I can counter them all the way down. They actually do opt to shield up that move, but at this point, it's just in counter down range. I have a Body Slam as well on our Lickilicky. I don't think there's really any way that we can lose this matchup. Icy Wind ends up drawing our final shield. Ice Punch coming through in just a second here. This should draw the knockout against this Pokemon, or potentially just barely not because of that debuff. Ice Punch is going to be thrown. Our opponent gets knocked out. GG's to them. Next game, we're going to see our Medicham hopefully into a good lead. It's going to be a Wormadam. Honestly, not the best lead, but not the worst lead. We have a lot of neutral play across the entire board with this team. Looks like they're not running Confusion. They are running Bug Bite, which is a one-turn move. They have Stab, obviously, as well, but it's not the strongest move in the game, so I'm not taking that much faster pressure. This is going to be a Dynamic Punch going to be thrown. Our opponent is going... Oh, they actually caught on a Bruxish. Okay, very good play by them. This Bruxish is going to try its best to whittle down our Lickilicky, but I know at this point that Dynamic Punch still did like half of their health. This should be able to be in range where a Body Slam will knock them out. I can overfarm here as much as I need to and then go for a Shadow Ball to make up for the missed damage that I had with that Dynamic Punch catch with the Shadow Ball against that Wormadam later on. Body Slam gets no-shielded. If I see that Wormadam come in, I'm going to throw the Shadow Ball instantly, try to get as much damage against him as I can, and this Shadow Ball is likely going to land. Our opponent has a big decision to make, though, if they want to invest in Wormadam, which they actually do end up doing, but Bug Bite not doing anywhere near as much damage as our opponent likely would want it to do. They are forced to throw energy before my next Shadow Ball, and because of this, our Medicham is in a pretty good spot. Iron Head will knock us out here. Medicham is going to come in, try its best to counter this down, but I know I can't quite counter down before they're able to reach another Iron Head, so I'm going to shield this up and then reach a move when I can. Bug Buzz is going to get shielded here. That's a lot of energy down the drain for our opponent. I can Dynamic Punch this Pokemon, try to knock them out, or get their final shield depending on what they want to do. Dynamic Punch coming through. Our opponent does shield it up, and now we can counter down and potentially have a Dynamic Punch or an Ice Punch against whatever that final Pokemon is going to be. In comes a Charge-Move, likely just an Iron Head at this point. They do reach the Iron Head, and their final Pokemon going to be an Alomomola. Makes a lot of sense with a Wormadam. You probably want to have a very good answer to a Fire type in the backline, but because we do reach this Dynamic Punch, it will chip down this Alomomola just enough where I'm pretty sure our own will always be able to win the mirror match. I don't know if we can quite reach a move here. I'm going to just swap out with the Ice Punch, show that we have Alomomola in the backline, and take the win that game. GG's to our opponents today. A lot of fun to be had with Alomomola. It is honestly a bit of a bulky Pokemon. I don't normally like playing Pokemon that are so bulky and so slow to charge moves, but in this meta, it's very safe. It's able to win against a lot of neutral matchups, and even matchups you might consider kind of bad, it's able to overcome just with its raw stats and typing. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more videos like this on the channel, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.